Laura Bennett woke to a harsh, rasping cough coming from behind a thin curtain. The sound scraped through the silence like sandpaper. A sharp chemical smell filled the air, stinging her nose and throat. Disinfectant. Hospital. Pain followed the realization. A deep, burning agony spread across her left side, settling into her ribs. Every breath felt like it was tearing something open inside her. She tried to move, but her body responded slowly, heavily. Her eyelids fluttered as she turned her head. This was not the bright, quiet recovery room she had been promised. The walls were dull and stained, the paint chipped in places. A cracked clock ticked loudly above a rusted door, each second echoing too clearly. A plastic cup sat on a metal tray beside her bed, empty and forgotten. Laura's hand trembled as she reached for the call button. Her fingers barely obeyed. Panic crept into her chest. Then the door opened. Paul Bennett walked in. He looked calm, too calm. His suit was crisp, his hair neatly styled, as if he had stepped out of a business meeting instead of a hospital corridor. He did not rush to her side. He did not take her hand. Behind him, Dorothy Bennett sat rigid in a wheelchair, her sharp eyes alert and cold. Standing beside Paul was a woman Laura recognized instantly. Vanessa Cole. Laura's voice came out as a weak whisper. Paul, did it work? Is your mother okay? Paul didn't answer right away. He stepped closer and dropped a thick envelope onto Laura's chest. The weight pressed painfully against her fresh surgical wound. That's your divorce agreement, he said evenly. I've already signed. The word echoed in her ears. Divorce. Laura stared at him, struggling to understand. Divorce? Paul? I just gave you my kidney. I just saved your mother. Dorothy let out a dry, humorless laugh. Saved me? Don't be foolish. You were only useful for what your body could provide. Now that it's gone, so is your place here. Vanessa smiled and raised her hand slightly. A large diamond ring caught the light. Paul and I are engaged, she said softly, and I'm pregnant. The room spun. Laura's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Paul finally met her eyes, but there was no guilt there. We were never really married in the way you thought, he said. You were a solution to a problem. My mother needed a kidney. You happened to be a match. Laura tried to speak, but no sound came. Paul continued, his voice detached. We'll give you $10,000, enough to start over somewhere. Modest. Something inside Laura fractured quietly, not with rage, not with screaming, just a clean, silent break, like glass cracking under pressure. In that moment, she understood the truth she had refused to see for 2 years. The man she loved had never existed. Before Laura Bennett became a patient in a neglected hospital ward, she had been a woman who believed deeply in the idea of family. Not because she had known it, but because she had grown up without it. Her childhood was a series of temporary homes, foster houses where suitcases stayed half-packed and affection came with conditions. Some families were kind, others were cruel. All of them were temporary. Laura learned early that love could vanish overnight, leaving no explanation behind. By the time she turned 18, she wanted only one thing: to belong, to sit at a table where no one questioned why she was there. When she met Paul Bennett, he felt like an answer to a prayer she had never spoken out loud. He was charming, attentive, and patient. He listened when she talked about her past. He remembered details no one else ever had. When he proposed, he held her hands and said, "You'll never be alone again." She believed him. But Dorothy Bennett made her position clear from the beginning. Dorothy came from wealth and status. Laura, in her eyes, was an outsider, someone who didn't speak correctly, didn't sit properly, didn't belong in the Bennett world. At family dinners, Dorothy corrected Laura's posture and manners in front of everyone. She commented on her clothes, her background, her silence. Paul always brushed it aside. "She's difficult with everyone," he would say. "Just give her time." So Laura tried harder. She cooked elaborate meals. She cleaned obsessively. She smiled through criticism. Every harsh comment felt like a test she could still pass if she tried enough. Laura believed love could be earned. That belief is how people get trapped. Not because they are weak, but because they want to be loved. Then Dorothy fell ill. The diagnosis came fast. Kidney failure. Dialysis helped at first, then stopped being enough. Doctors spoke in careful tones. Time was running out. Paul came to Laura late one night, his eyes red, his voice shaking. "My mom doesn't have much time," he said. "We need you." Laura felt fear tighten her chest. I know she's sick, Paul. I'm scared too. He took her hands, squeezing them gently. You're a match. The tests confirmed it. Perfect match. It's like a miracle. Laura pulled her hands back. A kidney isn't nothing. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't have children? Paul sighed, as if burdened by unbearable responsibility. Medical science is advanced now. You'll live a normal life. We can think about children later. Right now, my mother is dying. Then he said the words that mattered most. You always said you wanted a real family. This is how you become a true Bennett. The words settled into her chest like poison wrapped in hope. When Laura asked, Will your mother accept me if I do this? Paul smiled and kissed her forehead. She'll see you as her hero. That was all Laura needed to hear. The paperwork arrived quickly, too quickly. A young nurse brought stacks of forms. A notary waited in the corner. Paul sat beside Laura, guiding her hand. This is consent. This is risk disclosure. This one is just an emergency reallocation clause. What does that mean? Laura asked, pointing to the page. It's standard, Paul replied smoothly. It allows doctors to make fast decisions if something unexpected happens. Laura was exhausted, afraid, hopeful. Her head ached, her heart wanted to believe. So she signed. That is how traps are built, not with force, but with paperwork and promises. Laura believed she was saving her family. In reality, she was signing away part of herself. Pain came first, then confusion, then the truth. Laura woke to fire tearing through her side, her body heavy and unresponsive. The ceiling above her was yellowed and cracked. A violent cough shook the curtain beside her bed. This was not the future she had been promised. And the people standing before her now made sure she understood exactly why. Laura's eyes stung as she struggled to focus. Paul Bennett stood there, calm and distant, an envelope resting on her bed. Dorothy's eyes were sharp, unmoving, and Vanessa's ring glinted in the harsh hospital light. The words Paul had spoken earlier echoed in her mind. We'll give you $10,000, enough to start over somewhere cheap. Laura felt a strange mixture of disbelief and cold fury. She had sacrificed her own body for a family she thought she belonged to, only to be discarded like a broken tool. Her heart pounded, but no tears came, only the hollow, heavy ache of betrayal. Dorothy leaned forward, her voice brittle yet venomous. You were never part of this family. You were useful once. That is all. Vanessa touched Paul's arm lightly, her smile smug. We are building a real family now, she said. Laura's lips pressed into a thin line, but her mind raced. The world she had known, the life she had trusted, was gone. But something inside her refused to break completely. Before she could react further, the door swung open. A tall man in a crisp white coat entered, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk. What is happening here? His voice was calm but firm, carrying the authority of someone who did not tolerate nonsense. Paul turned, trying to maintain composure. Doctor, this is a private family matter, he said, his tone clipped. The doctor's gaze hardened as he stepped closer to Laura's bedside. I am Dr. Michael Hayes, head of transplant surgery. You are causing medical distress to my patient. His eyes swept over Dorothy and Vanessa. This woman is not to be manipulated or threatened. Dorothy's thin lips tightened. She is no longer part of our family. We are leaving. No, you are not, Dr. Hayes replied steadily. Not until the truth is clear. Paul's face paled. What truth? Dr. Hayes spoke carefully, but his words struck like thunder. Your mother's kidney transplant was canceled. Her final blood tests showed active infection and immune rejection markers. If we had proceeded, she would have died on the table. Your wife's kidney was redirected to the next priority patient with a matching profile, Richard Hale. The name landed like a punch. Richard Hale, one of the wealthiest, most influential men in the country, had received Laura's kidney. She had saved his life. The truth unfurled before her, and for the first time in weeks, Laura felt a spark of calm clarity. Dr. Hayes continued. You signed emergency reallocation documents. By attempting to manipulate the process, you inadvertently ensured the kidney went to someone truly in need. You trapped yourself, not her. The room felt impossibly small as Paul stumbled backward, realization dawning. Dorothy's expression faltered, and Vanessa's smug smile vanished. Karma, it seemed, had arrived wearing a white coat. Within the hour, Laura was moved. Nurses wheeled her through quiet corridors to a private elevator, and when the doors opened, sunlight flooded a clean, spacious hospital wing. Her room was the kind she had only seen in magazines: fresh flowers, soft lighting, and the gentle hum of attentive care. A man in a black suit waited by her side. "My name is Caleb Moore," he said. "I represent Mr. Hale. You will stay here while you recover. Everything is secure." Laura blinked. Why are you doing this?" Caleb's expression was neutral. "Because you saved his life. That is a debt that cannot be ignored." A nurse approached, her voice soothing. Laura felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe without fear. Dr. Hayes stayed a few steps behind, giving her a reassuring nod. "You are stable, Laura. Your body will heal. Your strength will return. Do not let their cruelty make you feel small." For the first time in years, Laura felt safe. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet settle around her, knowing that somewhere, a man's life had been saved because of her. And somewhere below, the people who had tried to destroy her were beginning to face the consequences of their own greed. 2 days later, a man in a gray suit entered. "I'm Arthur Reynolds," he introduced himself. "I am Mr. Hale's attorney. We've reviewed the divorce papers Paul gave you." Laura's chest tightened. "I have nothing left to lose." Arthur opened a large folder. "You are mistaken. During your marriage, Paul registered several properties and 2 manufacturing companies under your name. He did this to protect assets, but the law recognizes these as yours." Laura frowned. "I signed the papers, but I didn't know what they were." "Exactly," Arthur said. "And in his rush to divorce, he made a critical mistake. By waiving claims to these assets, they remain legally yours." Laura's eyes widened. The factories, the buildings, the homes, her name on them meant they were hers. A laugh rose from her throat, soft at first, then deep and unrestrained. Paul had spent years calling her naive. His greed had just made her wealthy. Arthur leaned forward. "Once you sign the divorce papers, it is permanent. He cannot undo this." Laura picked up the pen, her hands steady now. "I want it finished." Arthur nodded. "It will be done." Richard Hale visited her when she was strong enough to sit up. He was thinner than his photographs suggested, but his gaze was sharp and deliberate. "You gave me more than a kidney," he said quietly. "You gave me time, the most valuable thing there is." He didn't offer pity. He offered knowledge, strategy, and empowerment. People like Paul thrive on control. To survive, you need power, not revenge. Money, knowledge, confidence, these are your tools now. Laura absorbed every word. She didn't argue. When she left the hospital, she did not return to the small apartment Paul had chosen for her. She moved into one of Hale's residences, where tutors, lawyers, and advisors guided her. She learned contracts, negotiations, and the strength to say no. Her hair was cut short, her posture changed, her voice steadied. The woman who once apologized for existing began to vanish. This wasn't revenge yet. This was preparation, a rebirth. Before you can fight, you must first understand your own strength. Laura was becoming someone who could never be used again. 3 months later, Paul Bennett was desperate. His company teetered on the brink of collapse. Dorothy was back on dialysis, and Vanessa's spending was reckless. Then came an invitation, an investment meeting with Laura Bennett, now a senior director at Hale Capital. He read it with disbelief. "She still needs me," he muttered. He entered her office, attempting confidence, but Laura's calm demeanor unnerved him. She listened to his plea for temporary financial help. Then, quietly, she offered $15 million, but with conditions. Impossible targets, full collateral. Paul's eyes sparkled with greed. He didn't read the fine print. He saw only the money, believing he still controlled it. Laura watched silently. The trap she had avoided before was now closing, but this time, it was his. Laura Bennett entered the hospital quietly, carrying a folder in her hands. The room fell silent as Paul, Dorothy, and Vanessa froze in place. Paul tried to recover first, forcing a strained smile. "Laura, you came." She ignored him. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Vanessa first. "You should see this," she said, placing the folder on the table. Vanessa opened it hesitantly. Inside were photos, bank statements, and hotel receipts. Laura's voice was calm, almost clinical. "You've been embezzling from Paul's company and hiding other affairs," she said plainly. Vanessa's face drained of color. She tried to laugh nervously, but the sound was hollow. Then Laura placed another set of papers on the bed. "And this, your pregnancy timeline." Paul picked them up, his hands trembling. Vanessa went silent. "I was in Chicago when this happened," Laura said firmly, leaving no room for denial. Paul's face turned ashen. "Is the baby mine?" he asked, voice cracking. Vanessa could not answer. Laura pressed play on her phone. Paul's voice filled the room, recorded without warning. "Vanessa is a mistake. I'll leave her once I get the money. I'd put my mother in a nursing home if I have to." Dorothy's eyes widened. Disbelief painted across her lined face. Paul fell to his knees. "Mom, I was lying. Laura's eyes scanned the trio in front of her. "You sold me for a kidney. You sold her for comfort and convenience, and you sold your own mother for security and wealth. That is what you are." Dorothy reached for her son weakly. "Help me." Laura stepped back. "Some gifts," she said softly, "can only be given once." At that moment, alarms blared. The heart monitor beside Dorothy screamed. Doctors and nurses rushed in, chaos filling the room. Dorothy's hands shook as she struggled to breathe. Paul screamed for assistance. Vanessa tried to flee but was stopped by hospital security. Laura walked away without looking back. The noise faded behind her. For her, it was over. Justice did not need cruelty. It only needed truth. Dorothy Bennett did not survive the night, not solely from kidney failure, but from the shock of realizing her son's betrayal. 2 hours later, police arrived. Paul was arrested for fraud, asset misuse, and manipulation. His company accounts were frozen. Vanessa was taken for embezzlement and identity fraud. Neither fought. Their arrogance had left them vulnerable, and they had fallen. Laura watched from a distance. She did not feel joy, only relief. Relief that the nightmare had ended. She had survived, and those who tried to destroy her had met the consequences of their own choices. A year later, Laura stood in a quiet cemetery. 2 simple headstones marked the graves of her parents. She placed fresh white flowers at their base, kneeling slightly. "I am okay," she whispered. So much has changed. Her scar, a thin white line, was no longer a mark of weakness, but a symbol of endurance. Her body had healed, and so had her spirit. Laura now ran a foundation that ensured kidney patients received ethical treatment and legal protection. "No one under my care would ever be treated the way I was," she thought, a sense of purpose settling into her chest. Dr. Michael Hayes stood a few steps behind her. "Ready?" he asked gently. Laura nodded. Together, they walked toward the sunlight. Her path was no longer one dictated by others. She had reclaimed it. Richard Hale remained a constant presence in her life, not as a savior, but as a partner in empowerment. He taught her strategy, finance, negotiation, and self-confidence. The woman who had once apologized for her existence was gone. Laura was now a force, fully in control of her life. Her transformation was deliberate. She cut her hair short, reshaped her posture, and learned to speak with authority. Knowledge replaced fear. Confidence replaced self-doubt. Before revenge could be sought, she had prepared herself fully. This was not cruelty. It was reclamation. 3 months after her rebirth, Paul Bennett attempted to manipulate her again, thinking she still needed him. He walked into her office, confident, believing the power he once held over her remained. Laura listened as he described his company's dire situation. Then, with calm precision, she offered $15 million, but on impossible terms. Full collateral, steep deadlines, and legal traps. Paul had not read the fine print. He saw only the money, believing himself in control. Laura knew better. The trap was set. The ground beneath him vanished as he realized too late that greed had blinded him. The final confrontation took place at the hospital where Dorothy had spent her last days. Laura entered with authority, her presence commanding attention. Paul and Vanessa froze. Laura laid out the evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and deceit. Each document, each photo, each recording told a story Paul could no longer deny. Dorothy's weakened state left her unable to intervene. Paul pleaded. Vanessa tried to rationalize, but Laura remained unmoved. The law had been on her side. The truth had been her ally. In that moment, power had shifted entirely. Paul's company collapsed. His mother was gone. Vanessa's schemes were exposed. And Laura? She remained untouched, her moral and financial integrity intact. Justice had been served without hatred, without malice, only the clarity of truth. Laura's life after these events was marked by empowerment and purpose. She did not seek revenge for the sake of anger. She sought security, knowledge, and the ability to protect herself and others. She transformed her trauma into action. Her foundation flourished, providing care, guidance, and legal advocacy for kidney patients. Every patient under her guidance was a reminder that exploitation could be stopped, that survival could become strength. Laura no longer apologized for her existence. She walked with confidence, spoke with authority, and acted with deliberate precision. The woman who had once been naive and trusting had been replaced by someone who understood her own worth. The story of Laura Bennett is not one of luck. It is one of awakening, preparation, and resilience. She did not win because fortune smiled upon her. She won because she stopped believing lies about her value. Too many people remain in toxic situations because they equate love with sacrifice. But real love does not demand your pain, your health, or your identity. Laura's journey was proof. Your body, your heart, and your future are yours alone. No one has the right to exploit them. And when you reclaim what is yours, you become unstoppable. Standing in the sunlight, Laura breathed deeply. The past was behind her. The scars, though faint, reminded her that she had survived. That survival had become power, and power had become purpose. Somewhere, a man she saved lived on because of her. And somewhere else, those who had tried to destroy her were learning the cost of deceit. This was not revenge. It was justice, measured, precise, and inevitable. Laura had learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot force respect or love from those who are unworthy. You can only ensure that you are never again powerless in their hands. With a final glance at the city below, Laura turned, walking forward with the knowledge that she had reclaimed her life. Her path was no longer dictated by fear, manipulation, or false love. It belonged to her, and she would never surrender it again.